Imagine for a second that you are walking right into a bank.
Okay.
But I want you to completely erase the image of the marble floors and the air conditioning and the tellers sitting behind that bulletproof glass.
Right.
Instead, you are standing in ankle-deep mud. The air is humid. It smells like rain and soil. And instead of stacks of cash locked away in a steel vault, the assets are literally growing out of the ground.
Breathing and stretching towards the sky.
Exactly. They're alive.
It sounds like the setting of a fantasy novel or maybe some solar punk sci-fi story.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. This is a very real, very grounded economic revolution that's happening right now in Northeast Thailand.
Yeah, we are diving into the story of the Baan ThaLi tree bank in Khon today.
And before you think this is just some, nice feel-good community gardening project.
Which are great, don't get me wrong.
Oh, absolutely, they're great. But let me hit you with a headline number that really changes the conversation here. This community just became the first in Thailand to successfully sell carbon credits at this specific scale, and they generated 1.2 million baht in revenue.
That is a staggering number for a single community project.
Right.
And what makes it so fascinating is the method. They didn't have to chop down a single log to get that money. They're literally selling the service of the trees existing. They're selling the air.
Or the cleaning of the air, yeah.
Exactly.
It's wild to think about. So for today's deep dive, we are looking at a really detailed report from Thai PBS. It features some incredible interviews with the project president, Thana Phizit Jaikwang, and a local farmer named Prichen Goksema.
So the mission for this deep dive is to really understand how a community goes from struggling with monoculture farming to building a green economy where trees literally pay the rent.
Yep, because this isn't just about local economics, although that is the heart of it.
Right. This is a pilot model for Thailand's national goal, the target for net zero by 2065. So what's happening in this small village in Khon is actually a blueprint for the future of the entire country.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because I think for a lot of us, carbon credits, it's this buzzword. You hear CEOs talking about it at climate summits, or you see a little checkbox to offset your flight when you book a vacation online.
Right, pay an extra $10 to feel less guilty.
Exactly. But here we have actual farmers in muddy boots making it work on the ground. But to appreciate the win, we really have to look at the before picture. What was life actually like in Baan ThaLi before the trees took over?
Well, if you go back to around 2009.
That's year 2552 in the Thai calendar.
Right. The landscape looked very, very different back then. It was completely dominated by monoculture. We are talking about rice paddies and field crops like corn or cassava just stretching as far as the eye could see.
And monoculture's a risky game. I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket is the oldest advice out there for a reason.
It is. It's a high-stakes gamble every single season. You've got high production costs. You need the chemical fertilizers, the pesticides. You have to rent heavy machinery for plowing and harvesting.
And the kicker is you have absolutely no control over the market price when it's time to sell.
Exactly. You do all that work, take on all that risk, and then the global market dictates what your crop is worth. If the price of rice drops, or if there's a drought or a flood...
They're not just breaking even.
No, you are in debt. It was this vicious cycle of financial instability. Farmers were constantly leveraged against their own land. They were essentially employees of the market bearing all of the risk.
So in 2009, they decide they have to try something different. They start organizing this tree bank. Now, I love this concept, but usually when people say we need to plant trees, it feels like a charity drive.
Yeah.
Did they just go out and plant 1 million seeds overnight?
No, and that is the brilliant part of this model. It actually started with asset recognition.
Asset recognition.
Yeah. The initial concept was simply encouraging farmers to go out and identify and count the trees that were already existing on their land.
Okay.
Maybe they were just growing on the ridges of the paddy fields or at the head of the field. It was about recognizing that these trees, which were often ignored or even seen as obstacles to the tractors, were actually assets.
But recognizing a tree is nice. Getting paid for it is better. And this is where the story really shifts for me, because this is where the BAAC enters the picture. The Bank for Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives.
Right.
Usually banks want you to pay them interest, but the BAAC did something completely backwards here.
They flipped the script. The BAIC didn't just come in and offer moral support or a pat on the back. They provided a hard financial incentive. They offered 3 baht per tree as an initial maintenance fee.
Wait, hold on. Let's pause right there. 3 baht per tree.
Yes, 3 baht.
I mean, let's be real here. You can't even buy a stick of gum for 3 baht. That sounds almost insulting. How did that actually incentivize anyone?
Well, if you look at it as a purchase price for the timber, sure. It's nothing. It's completely negligible. But you have to look at the psychology of it and the scale. This was a maintenance fee. It wasn't a purchase price.
Okay.
It was the very first step in turning a natural resource into a financial asset. It signaled to the farmers, hey, this tree has value. It is worth keeping alive. We see it.
Ah, I see. So it's validation.
Exactly. It wasn't just scenery anymore, it was inventory. It shifted the entire mindset from this tree is in the way of my rice tractor to this tree is a registered asset on my books.
That is a crucial psychological shift. And the Thai PBS report mentions they didn't stop at just looking at the trees, they started processing the waste too.
Yes. Way before they even got to the high-tech global carbon markets, they looked at the fallen branches. Usually people just burn those openly.
Which creates horrible smog and PM 2.5 pollution.
Exactly. Or they just let them rot.
Yeah.
But instead, they started making charcoal and wood vinegar.
Wood vinegar, what's that used for?
It's a byproduct of charcoal production. It actually works as a natural pesticide and fertilizer. So it proves to the community that a tree could generate income via byproducts without ever having to be chopped down completely.
Proof of concept.
Right. Proof that the living tree had economic output.
So they're building this culture of trees equal money. But the big leap, that 1.2 million baht leap we talked about at the start, that happened when they moved to carbon credits.
Yes.
And this is where the math gets a little intense, so I want to really break this down. This is the deep dive part. How do you go from a 3 baht local subsidy to millions in revenue?
You have to move from a local subsidy to a global market mechanism. And to do that, they partnered with the TGO, the Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization.
Okay.
This is crucial because you can't just go to the global market and say, hey, I have a tree, pay me. Trust is the absolute currency of the carbon market. You need strict certification.
So it's like having an auditor come in and check your bank vault. But instead of counting gold bars, they're out there measuring trunk circumference and canopy density.
Precisely. The carbon market entirely relies on verification. So the TGO comes in, and the project ended up selling 401 tons of carbon credits, technically carbon dioxide equivalent.
401 tons. And what was the price they got for that?
They secured a price of 3,000 baht per ton.
3,000 baht per ton.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly high.
It is extremely high compared to where they started. The report actually mentions an earlier support phase. It was likely a trial run or some corporate social responsibility initiative. During that phase, they only received roughly 100 baht per ton.
Whoa. So we're going from 100 baht a ton to 3,000 baht. That's a 30x increase in value.
Yeah, that earlier phase only totaled about 30,000 baht for the entire group. I mean, it's nice to have, but it's not life-changing money for a whole village.
Right.
But this new deal at 3,000 baht per ton, that generated approximately 1.2 million baht over a 3-year period.
That is a massive injection of cash. And this all came from what, roughly 14,000 trees?
14,072 trees to be exact. Strictly counted, verified, and certified.
Okay, so 1.2 million baht. It sounds huge. But when you spread that over a whole village, what does it actually mean for the individual guy putting on his boots in the morning?
Right, let's look at the individual level.
Yeah, because the report introduces us to Preacher Ngoksima. He's a local farmer. He's got a 14-ray plot, about 1,000 trees. What is his actual take on this? I mean, is he retiring to a yacht?
No yachts in Khon just yet, but Preach is the perfect example of this new asset mindset. He breaks the math down very pragmatically in the interview. He calculates that he earns an average of roughly 41 baht per tree over that 3-year certification period.
Okay, so doing the math on that, that's about 14 baht per tree per year.
Right, and again, if you just look at a single tree, 14 baht doesn't seem like much at all. It's a bottle of water.
Yeah.
But Precha has 1,000 trees, so that's 14,000 baht a year, or over 40,000 baht for the 3-year cycle.
Just for letting the trees stand there and grow.
Exactly. And you have to remember, this is additional income. He isn't doing this instead of his other farming. He's doing it alongside it.
That is the definition of passive income. That's the dream everyone reads about in those personal finance blogs.
Well, we will get to the passive part in a second because it's not entirely effort-free in the very beginning. But the key philosophy here, and Thanaphis, the president, talks about this a lot, is income along the way.
Income along the way. I love that phrasing.
It's brilliant because it solves the single biggest problem in traditional forestry. Usually, if you plant a timber tree, you have to wait 20 or 30 years to chop it down and sell it.
Which is an entire generation of waiting with zero cash flow.
Right. It's a terribly illiquid asset. But carbon credits change that entire equation. The tree is working for you right now. It's producing oxygen, it's storing carbon, and you are getting paid a salary for it while it grows.
So the tree is essentially paying its own rent on the land.
Precisely. And Preacha points out that he isn't planning to clear cut this forest anyway. He practices selective thinning. He views the trees as his long-term savings account. So if he needs a large sum of money down the line, say for a child's education or a medical emergency, he might selectively harvest and sell a few trees for timber. But the overall forest remains intact so it can keep earning those annual carbon credits.
It's exactly like living off the dividends of an index fund and only selling the actual stock when you absolutely have to. That is a very sophisticated financial model for a small farm.
It really is. It completely turns the farm into a diversified investment portfolio.
Speaking of the stock, though, we should talk about the specific trees they are growing. Because they aren't just out there growing random bushes or whatever weeds pop up in the ditch. These are high-value assets.
They are. The sources highlight a few very specific species. The star of the show seems to be the yang knot tree. That's Dipterocarpus elatus.
Okay.
It's an absolute giant of the tropical forest, very valuable. But they also mention Taki and Thong.
Taki and Thong, that's ironwood, right?
Yes, Hopea odorata. It is a very auspicious hardwood in Thai culture.
Auspicious usually means don't cut it down because spirits live inside it, doesn't it?
In traditional belief, yes, absolutely. The spirits are very fond of Takian trees. But economically speaking, it means it's a high-density wood. And high density means it stores a massive amount of carbon.
That makes sense.
And it holds its value incredibly well as timber. They also have teak and mahogany in the mix, so these are really the blue chip stocks of the tree world.
Okay, so you've got the Yang Na and the Taki and Thong growing. You're making your 14 baht a year per tree. But let's get back to the reality check you hinted at earlier. You said this isn't exactly free money from day one.
No, because it's farming, and farming is always work. Preacha explains that the first 2 years are absolutely critical. You cannot just stick a seedling in the dirt and walk away and wait for the check to arrive. You have to actively clear weeds. You have to fight off the vines.
The vines. He specifically mentioned vines that can strangle the saplings, right?
Yes. If you don't clear those vines, the tree dies and your asset is gone. Period. So for the first 2 years, it is active, sweaty labor. You are out there with a machete or a hoe protecting your investment. But here's the payoff. By years 3 to 5, the canopy closes.
The canopy closes. That sounds poetic.
It does, but it's also a very practical turning point in the forest's life. When the trees get big enough, their leaves touch and they block the sunlight from hitting the forest floor. And without that sun, the weeds and the vines just die off naturally.
So the forest literally starts weeding itself.
Exactly. After year 5, nature basically takes over the maintenance. The workload drops significantly, effectively to 0 for maintenance. But the carbon credit value keeps accumulating every single year.
That is such a cool biological milestone. You work hard for 5 years, and then the whole system just goes on autopilot.
Yep.
Now, ThaLi, the project president, he's not satisfied with just 14,000 trees, is he?
Not at all. He is already looking at phase 2. He wants to hit 50,000 trees.
That is a massive jump.
Right?
Why such aggressive expansion? Is it just ambition, or is there a business reason?
It comes down to the strict economics of verification. We mentioned the TGO, the auditors, earlier. Bringing in auditors to measure carbon capture is not cheap. It requires technical expertise, specialized laser equipment, travel time.
Yeah.
And ThaLi mentions that you actually have to perform verification twice in order to sell the credits.
So there are heavy fixed costs. Whether you have 1 tree or 1,000,000 trees, you still have to pay the auditor to show up.
Exactly. To make those high auditing fees worth it, you need economy of scale. You need a massive volume of carbon to offset the cost of counting it. That's why they're pushing so hard to expand this to the Baan or the sub-district level. They need more partners and more land to make the profit margin healthier.
It is so fascinating that a local community group is thinking about economies of scale the exact same way a factory manager or a tech startup would. It shows a level of business sophistication that people don't always associate with subsistence farming.
Absolutely. And they even have a contingency plan for dead trees. It's not just, oops, that one died. Oh, well.
Right, because if you sold the carbon credit for a tree and then the tree dies, you essentially defrauded the buyer, right? You promised carbon storage that doesn't exist anymore.
Technically, yes. You are in debt on that carbon. So the tree bank actually maintains nursery stock. They keep things like 1-year-old Takian thong seedlings ready to replant immediately to maintain the overall carbon count. It's pure inventory management.
It really is a bank. They have reserves, they have liquidity requirements, just with wood instead of cash.
They do. And this really brings us to the bigger picture of the whole report. The source material actually starts by mentioning that trees heal the mind and reduce stress.
The heart healing aspect. I really like that touch in the Thai PBS report.
Yeah, it's a great angle. But they connect this psychological benefit directly to the hard economics. This is what they call the green economy. It proves that being green isn't just a charity project or a rich person's hobby. It's about, as the source explicitly says, wealth, security, and sustainability.
And this connects directly to the national agenda. Thailand has this very public goal of net zero by 2065.
And Baan ThaLi is the pilot. It is the proof of concept. If you can make this work in a small community in Kaen, turning debt-ridden rice farmers into successful carbon credit traders, you can scale this nationally.
Yeah.
It completely challenges the assumption that environmentalism is always a cost center. Usually companies complain that going green costs money. Here, it is the profit center.
But I do want to clarify one thing about the lifestyle change for these farmers. Are they abandoning traditional farming completely? Because you can't eat a carbon credit.
No, they aren't. And that's a critical point for the stability of the whole model. It's a mixed farming model.
Okay.
They have forest zones for long-term savings. That's the tree bank. But they also have fruit zones for midterm income. Harvesting mangoes or whatever provides seasonal cash flow. And they still maintain rice paddies for annual sustenance.
It's a diversified portfolio.
Exactly. Think about it in investment terms. You have your high-risk, high-reward annual stocks, which is the rice. You have your steady bonds paying regular interest, which is the fruit. And you have your long-term retirement fund, your gold reserves, which are the trees.
It is incredibly sophisticated financial planning. They're just using land instead of a brokerage account.
And they use rain-fed agriculture for the rice, so they are naturally adapting to the water levels too. It's a very resilient system.
It just seems so sensible when you lay it all out like that. Why aren't we doing this everywhere?
Well, change is hard. And remember that transition period, those first 2 to 5 years where you are fighting vines and waiting for the canopy to close, that requires a lot of patience and faith.
Right. The sweaty labor phase.
Yeah. But what Baan ThaLi shows is that once established, the system is incredibly resilient. In a monoculture system, one bad year of drought destroys you. In this mixed system, if the rice fails, you have the fruit. If the fruit prices drop globally, you still have the carbon credits paying out. You are never at zero.
So we've really watched them go from a monoculture debt trap to a system where the trees are paying dividends in oxygen, in cash, and eventually in timber. It's a complete turnaround.
It is, and it fundamentally changes the relationship between the farmer and the land itself. Preeta isn't fighting the land to squeeze every last grain of rice out of it anymore. He's partnering with the land to grow long-term assets.
You know, listening to all this, I'm looking at my own backyard a little differently today. I mean, I don't have 14 rays of land, but the idea that a tree is an asset and not just a decoration that really sticks with you.
It forces you to rethink how you assign value to the world around you. We so often ignore things just because they don't have a price tag hanging off them today.
Exactly.
But as the world changes, as carbon literally becomes a traded global commodity, these things that were dormant are waking up financially.
It makes you wonder. If a small community in Khon can turn 14,000 trees into 1.2 million baht of air money, what other dormant assets are sitting right in front of us in our own communities? What else are we completely ignoring just because we're only looking at its traditional use?
That is the million baht question, or I guess the 1.2 million baht question.
Nice. Maybe I should go plant that Taki and Thong tree in the backyard after all. Get my own little carbon bank started.
Just remember, you have to clear the vines for the first 2 years. That's the hard part.
I'll just hire you to do that. You're the expert after all.
I think my consulting fee might be a little bit higher than 3 baht per tree.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. It has been a truly fascinating look at how Baan ThaLi is changing the game.
Indeed. It's a powerful story of innovation, resilience, and really the power of seeing value where others just see wood.
Catch you on the next one. Keep looking for those green assets out there.